Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are watching an unstoppable force collide with an immovable object.
And not a summer blockbuster.
No, not a physics experiment either. We're talking about your rent.
It definitely feels just as dramatic, though. Except, the stakes are real. They're the actual bank accounts of millions of New Yorkers.
Absolutely. We're looking at the new administration of Mayor Zohran Mamdani. I mean, he swept into office on this one, huge promise.
The 4-year rent freeze.
For 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. It sounds amazing on a bumper sticker.
Sounds great at a rally.
But now that he's actually sitting in City Hall, he is hitting a wall of economic reality that, well, according to our sources, it might not just stop the freeze. It might break the housing market entirely.
It's that classic clash, isn't it? Political promises versus hard math. And the math is notoriously stubborn.
So our mission today is to decode the machinery of New York housing. We're not just asking if rents will freeze, but what happens if you freeze revenue in a system where costs are just skyrocketing?
And we have a huge stack of sources today. We're pulling from Vital City, the Manhattan Institute, Reason, even the Post-Millennial.
Plus academic research from Columbia University and some heavy data sets from the Rent Guidelines Board itself.
We're going to look at everything from political booby traps left by the old mayor to the invisible tax that's hidden in your rent check.
And we need to talk about why developers are suddenly obsessed with the number 99.
Right.
So let's jump in. Mayor Mamdani wants to freeze rents. He won on this. To the average voter, the logic seems simple. He's the boss. He signs the paper. Rent freezes. Why can't he just do that? Sign an executive order and make it happen?
Because, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, the mayor of New York isn't a king. He can't just dictate rent by decree.
Okay.
That power belongs exclusively to this one group called the Rent Guidelines Board, the RGB.
Right, the 9-member panel.
Exactly. They meet every year. They vote on the adjustments for stabilized units.
Okay, but the mayor appoints the board members.
That's pretty standard, right? You win, you put your people on the board, they vote your way.
Usually, yes.
Right.
But here's the first plot twist. We found this fascinating detail in a report from the Manhattan Institute.
What's up?
Just before former Mayor Eric Adams left office. We're talking December 2025, literally right at the buzzer. He pulled a fast one.
No.
He appointed 4 new members to the RGB.
Wait, he stacked the board on his way out the door.
He absolutely did. And these aren't just random people. These are folks who are, let's say, historically skeptical of rent freezes.
They look at the numbers.
They look at operating costs.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. Their terms don't expire for 2 years.
So Mamdani is handcuffed.
Effectively, yeah.
Yep.
For the first half of his term, he likely doesn't have the votes.
Wow.
It's a political booby trap left by the outgoing administration to make sure that the market perspective stays on the board no matter who won the election.
That is ruthless political chess. But let's play devil's advocate. Let's say Mamdani is, I don't know, a super charming guy.
He convinces 1 or 2 of those Adams appointees to flip. They vote for a freeze. The political hurdle is cleared. Then what happens to the actual buildings?
This is where you have to stop looking at politics and start looking at a balance sheet. Vital City published some pretty alarming data on this.
Okay.
They estimate that right now, about 10% of rent-stabilized buildings are already underwater.
And when you say underwater, we're not talking about a flooded basement.
No. We're talking about financial drowning. It means the cost to run the building. Property taxes, water, heating oil, insurance, mandatory repairs. All of that is higher than the total rent coming in.
So they're operating at a loss every month.
A significant loss. And these are mostly older pre-war buildings. Think the Bronx, Queens, parts of Brooklyn.
And inflation doesn't care about the mayor's agenda.
Not at all. The cost of heating oil, insurance, hiring a plumber, all of that has just skyrocketed.
Right.
So if you freeze the building's income while those costs keep climbing...
You don't just hurt the landlord's profit, you bankrupt the building.
Exactly. It's like trying to freeze the price of bread at the bakery while the cost of flour and yeast triples.
Eventually, the baker just turns off the oven.
That's the perfect analogy. Yeah. And this brings us to the main character in the story. When we talk about landlords in the media, the image is kind of a cartoon villain.
Right, the guy in the top hat, twisting his mustache.
Exactly. And look, massive corporate landlords do exist, but a huge chunk of New York's housing is owned by small business owners.
Mom and pop landlords.
Yeah, and they're getting squeezed from both sides. Reason magazine highlighted this really compelling story about a woman named Ebony Hannibal.
Tell us about her.
She owns a 4-unit building in Brooklyn. She's not a tycoon. She relies on the rent to pay the mortgage and, keep the lights on. But she's owed a lot in back rent, and because of all these rising costs, she's actually considering selling. She just can't make the math work.
And it's not just the day-to-day costs, is it? The actual rules for renovations changed a few years back.
They did. You have to go back to 2019. New York passed the HSTPA, the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act.
Right, a huge win for tenant advocates.
At the time, yes, it closed a lot of loopholes.
Yeah.
But according to the small property owners of New York, it also it removed the financial incentives to actually fix up apartments.
How so? Walk me through that.
So before 2019, if a tenant moved out, the landlord could raise the rent a certain amount to pay for renovations, new kitchen, fixing the wiring.
An IAI, an individual apartment improvement?
Right, or a vacancy bonus.
Right.
The 2019 law basically gutted that mechanism. The idea was to stop landlords from pushing people out just to hike the rent.
Okay, I see the intent, but walk me through the logic now. I'm a landlord. A tenant moves out after 20 years.
Yeah.
The apartment is wrecked. It needs, say, $50,000 of work to be legal to rent again.
Right. Lead paint removal, new pipes, the works.
Okay.
Under the new law, the amount you can raise the rent to recoup that 50 grand is capped so low, it might take you 30 years to earn it back.
So as a rational person, what do?
You don't do the renovation. You can't afford to loan the building $50,000 for basically no return.
And if you don't do the renovation?
You can't legally rent it because it's not up to code. So you just lock the door.
This is what's called warehousing.
I hear people talk about warehousing like it's some kind of conspiracy theory, but these are real numbers, right?
This is not a theory, it's data. According to the sources, there are over 50,000 rent-stabilized apartments currently sitting empty.
50,000. That's the size of a small city. That's 50,000 families who could have a home, but the unit is just sitting there because the math is broken.
Precisely. It is a tragedy of unintended consequences. We wanted to protect tenants from rent hikes, but we ended up incentivizing landlords to just take units off the market entirely.
And for the buildings that are occupied.
The situation is getting dangerous. Vital City data shows spending on repairs has dropped by over 10%.
That's terrifying. That's not just peeling paint, that's broken boilers, leaky roofs. It's a maintenance death spiral. If you freeze the rent, the landlord has to make a choice every month. Do I pay the property tax bill to the city, or do I fix the boiler?
You can't do both.
They can't afford both, and if they don't pay the taxes,
Easy forecloses.
and then the city, which is already struggling to manage its own housing, has to take over thousands of these crumbling private buildings. It's an Armageddon scenario.
Okay, you mentioned the tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is something most renters, myself included, don't really think about. I pay rent, the landlord pays taxes. Not my problem.
And that right there is probably the single biggest misconception in New York real estate. Renters do pay property taxes.
It's just hidden.
It's hidden inside your rent check. And when we dug into the sources on this, specifically a thesis from Columbia and a report from Assemblymember Court, we found that the system is shockingly unfair to renters.
Unfair how?
New York uses what's called a fractional assessment system. It's incredibly complicated, but basically it boils down to two classes of people. Class 1 is homeowners, people who own brownstones, single-family homes. Class 2 is pretty much all rental buildings.
Class 1 versus Class 2. How big is the difference?
The tax code is designed to protect Class 1. If you own a $3 million brownstone in Park Slope, your effective tax rate is about 0.7%.
Incredibly low.
But if you live in a rental building down the street, that's Class 2, that building is taxed at roughly 3.6 to 5.6% of its value.
Whoa. Wait, so the rental building is taxed 5 times higher than the private mansion next door?
At least 5 times higher. It's a massive disparity. The Post-Millennial quoted a landlord who summed it up perfectly. He said, "You can't say you want to freeze the rent and then raise my property taxes."
It's mathematically impossible.
It is. The government is trying to have it both ways. They want low rents for voters, but they want high tax revenue from the buildings to pay for city services.
And because that tax bill is so huge?
About 30 to 40% of every dollar you pay in rent isn't going to the landlord's profit. It's not going to repairs. It's passing straight through to the city to pay property taxes.
That's the invisible tax.
And it is highly regressive. I mean, think about it. Who owns the brownstones? Often wealthier people, they pay 0.7%. Who rents in the Bronx or Queens, often lower-income families, their building pays 5%. Effectively, the tax code is transferring wealth from poor renters to rich homeowners.
That is a wild way to look at it. The system is rigged against the very people it claims to help.
Yep.
So if the old buildings are struggling and taxed to death, surely the solution is just to build new ones. Supply and demand, right? Flood the market, prices come down.
Supply and demand is the golden rule. And to his credit, Mayor Mamdani knows this. He's talking about a technocratic pivot to build more housing using a new tax incentive program called 485X. But
There's always a but.
the government has found a way to break this too. It's called the 99-unit problem.
The 99-unit problem. That sounds like a thriller.
It's a thriller for accountants, maybe. Here's the deal. To build rentals in New York, you need that tax break because, as we said, the property taxes are just too high.
Right.
But the new 485X program has a catch. If you build a building with 100 units or more, you are legally required to pay prevailing wages.
Which means union rights.
Essentially, yes. And look, union wages are great for the workers. Nobody is disputing that. But in terms of construction costs, it raises the price tag of the entire building by about 30%.
30% is a huge margin. That could kill a project.
It eats the entire profit margin. So developers have done the math. If they build 100 units, the cost spikes, the project fails.
So if they build 99 units,
They don't have to pay the prevailing wage, and the project works.
so they just stop at 99.
They are intentionally designing buildings with exactly 99 units. Even if the land could support 150 apartments, they build 99.
That's maddening. We have a housing shortage, and we have regulations that are literally shrinking buildings.
Yeah.
They're leaving 50 homes unbuilt on every project just to avoid the mandate. And on top of that, the National Multifamily Housing Council warns that just the threat of rent control scares off new construction entirely.
Right. If you're an investor, why would you build a rental building in New York if the government might freeze your income for 4 years?
You wouldn't. You'd build condos. Or you'd go build apartments in Florida or Texas. Capital is mobile. It goes where it's treated well.
This paints a pretty grim picture. The mayor is blocked, the buildings are underwater, the taxes are unfair, and new supply is getting strangled by red tape. Is there any path forward, or are we just watching a slow-motion car crash?
It does feel hopeless, but the experts specifically from Vital City and the NY Housing Conference, they suggest there is a way out, but it would require what they call a grand bargain.
And the mayor would have to do things that might go against his political ideology.
A lot of things. First, you have to pay for the freeze. You can't just freeze revenue. You have to cut costs.
So lower those property taxes on rental buildings.
That's number one. Lowering taxes might sound like a conservative idea, but it's really just a market reality idea. If you want cheap rent, you need cheap taxes.
Okay, cut costs to balance the freeze. What else?
Second, stop trying to help everyone. A blanket rent freeze helps a wealthy person in a rent-stabilized apartment on the Upper West Side just as much as a struggling family in the Bronx.
So targeted help.
Exactly. Give subsidies or vouchers to the people who actually need it. Subsidize the person, not the property.
That makes sense.
And third, and this is the big one, you have to unlock the vacancies. You have to reform that 2019 law. You have to let landlords reset the rent on those 50,000 empty apartments so they can afford to fix them up.
Bringing 50,000 units back online would be huge.
It would be. But it means admitting that the 2019 law maybe went too far. It means admitting that a profit motivation is actually necessary to get boilers fixed and apartments painted.
It's ironic, isn't it? To save his affordability agenda, the socialist mayor might have to adopt market-friendly tax cuts and deregulation.
It is the ultimate irony. But the alternative is that Armageddon scenario we talked about. If he ignores the math, the buildings fail. And when the buildings fail, the tenants suffer the most.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
It means the housing crisis isn't just about greedy landlords or socialist mayors. Those are easy villains. The real villain is the math.
It's taxes, insurance, and crumbling pipes.
Right. And it seems like every time the government tries to fix the price, they end up breaking the supply.
That's the pattern. Rent control often benefits the people who already have an apartment. If you have a lease today, a freeze sounds great.
But what about the person trying to move to New York? What about the young person looking for their first place? If nobody's building and 50,000 units are empty and nobody ever moves because their rent is frozen,
Then the door is locked.
you're effectively pulling up the ladder for the next generation. We're protecting the insiders at the expense of the outsiders.
That is a heavy thought to leave us with. Next time you look at your rent bill, maybe take a second to think about that invisible tax bill hidden inside it.
And ask yourself, is the problem the price? Or is the problem that we've made it illegal to build enough homes?
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.